Wolff slams the FIA. Another Grand Prix, another Red Bull victory. This pattern, which is now very familiar to the F1 fans this season, does not bring any good to the sport in terms of entertainment and popularity. Had it not been for the Ocon incident, the entire Azerbaijan GP would have been boring. FIA has been a target of criticism yet again, and not only for the very bad moment towards the end of the race, but for the whole state in which the sport is in now. Wolff sent some shocking statements towards the FIA, and to be honest, they were very expected. Join us as we take a look at them. Even to those who don't follow Formula 1 closely, Red Bull's dominance at the Azerbaijan GP and this season in general is obvious. Another 1-2 finish for the Austrian squad, this time with Perez taking the checkered flag ahead of teammate Verstappen, who unfortunately had to pit before the safety car was deployed when Nyck de Vries hit a wall. The Dutch driver made an easy recovery and passed Leclerc, all the while Perez was comfortably in the lead and brought the race to an end. Despite the hype leading up to the race, the majority of it went off without any real scares until the very end when a frightening incident occurred. A number of people, including some photographers, entered the pit lane as the podium ceremony was being set up, and after Alpine's gamble failed, Ocon was the only driver who hadn't yet pitted, and he did so on the final lap. During the live Sky Sports broadcast, commentator Ted Kravitz noted that some people stayed in the pit lane, seemingly oblivious to the approaching French driver. There was a scary moment when Ocon pulled into the pit lane and everyone had to scramble out of the way of his car to prevent a major collision. Kravitz nearly yelled on air as he stressed the mayhem and pointed out that everyone save the FIA could have seen this coming, to drive home his argument. Later, a visibly distressed Ocon reflected on the incident, saying, "It was definitely scary," he said. "I don't know why everyone was starting to prep the podium. We were still racing and there was all the time in the world to be doing so. It could have been a big issue for everyone there. I'm arriving at more than 300 kilometers per hour, leaving my braking as late as I can, and they were just after the line as well, so if I miss my braking point, I had to brake. I had to avoid, and it was pretty scary. Luckily, it was all good. I had no idea that they were there. I've never seen that before." While this is a scary situation to be in, and definitely FIA's fault, what Wolff said after that was very interesting, and it was not connected to the Ocon incident. We'll get to this in a second. It is generally expected that all drivers have finished their pit stops by the time the race has ended, though this is not always the case. After the finish of the race, parc fermé barriers are erected, and the FIA allows official photographers and local marshals access to the area in advance of photographing the podium celebrations. Photographers can get a bird's eye view from a tower. However, this does not preclude the possibility of pit stops being made on the final lap. The fact that everyone keeping tabs on today's race was aware of Esteban Ocon's impending pit stop set it apart from the rest. Between the Alpine and the McLaren garages was the designated spot for team guests, away from the main entrance and other sources of access for official photographers, TV crews and FIA officials. There was no problem with team visitors because everyone in the area was aware of the impending pit stop, including the security personnel who had been informed. The participants were official FIA photographers, hence the FIA ended up investigating itself. The stewards have summoned the person in charge of the parc fermé arrangement. The incident highlights the significance of learning when it is secure to admit visitors, and one could say that a potentially dangerous situation in F1 was narrowly avoided today. However, one F1 team principal branded the race as boring and urged Formula 1 to find a solution about it as soon as possible. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff stated to the media that the way things and rules are right now, Formula 1 needs to change completely. "It was not a thriller," the Mercedes team principal said. "No overtaking, even with a big pace difference, made it not great entertainment. Even if you are within 0.2 seconds, it is nearly impossible to overtake unless the other driver makes a mistake. After a race weekend like this, we mustn't take it down overall and say it is the wrong direction and we need to change completely. It is more about asking why wasn't it entertaining and revisit it. We need to look at how we can avoid a boring race." The Baku event marked the first implementation of the revised sprint format, which introduced a second qualifying session that determined the grid for the sprint, which is now completely separate from the main Grand Prix Prix, completely different to previously when the sprint's result decided the grid for the main race. The sprint format has received mixed reactions, as Max Verstappen said he felt the entire concept should be scrapped, while other drivers expressed their enjoyment of the new weekend structure, even if they wanted it limited to only a few events per year. Wolff highlighted that the only notable action near the front involved a collision between Verstappen and Mercedes' George Russell, which concluded with a verbal confrontation between the drivers in the pit lane. He said that they need to examine the entire weekend to see if there's any good to come out of it, stating that intense battles are essential in the sport and that those were missing from the main race on Sunday. We cannot help but agree with Toto Wolff. His remarks come at a time when F1 teams and drivers express concerns about the increased difficulty of overtaking. Last season, F1 implemented rules designed to tighten the competition and facilitate overtaking. While following other cars is now easier than before the rule change, drivers have mentioned that it has become more challenging this year due to teams' car development. Moreover, while the new regulations have made it simpler to follow cars compared to before 2022, this has been offset by a decrease in the slipstreams effect behind another vehicle. Instead of the racing becoming more competitive, the sport is currently witnessing one team's dominance, with Verstappen establishing a new record for the most wins in a single season in 2022, while Red Bull has claimed victory in all 4 races this season, putting them on track to monopolize the championship. Lando Norris also brought the boring race point, saying he wished the race had ended after 20 laps. The McLaren driver started the race in P7 but dropped to P9 after pitting ahead of an early safety car period. Norris eventually passed Nico Hülkenberg, who was driving with a different strategy, in the closing laps of the 51-lap race. In our opinion, this is the best possible result for McLaren to have gotten. According to Norris, the race lasted a long time, and he was upset that the safety car came out so soon after he had made his pit stop. As a result, Norris lost ground to Hülkenberg and Ocon, who had yet to make their pit stops, but he lost no places overall. Norris and his squad were so far ahead of the rest of the field that they risked being left behind, even if they hadn't had their misfortune. He said he was pleased with the result, considering that they had done as well as they could have under the circumstances by scoring a few key points. The FIA has a lot on its plate for the near future, as they have to make very necessary changes to improve the sport. But what can they do in terms of boringness? Yes, Red Bull will get hit by the wind tunnel restrictions further on in the season, so that might see changes in the top spots in the podium. But honestly, they won't be drastic. On the safety side, however, they have to make huge ones, because you cannot have people running around the pit lane with the race obviously not over yet. No one attending the Grand Prix should put anything before their own safety, and while it was lucky for everyone involved in the Ocon incident that he was able to stop in time for the people to get out of the way, there may be times when even that isn't enough, and the FIA is under pressure to guarantee safety at all times to prevent tragic outcomes from entirely preventable situations. We'll have to wait and see what comes of the fact that they had their representatives in Baku meet with the stewards after the race. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Do you think the FIA needs to drastically change in order to improve, or is there something else going on here? Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.